Captain Derek Shaw stood on the bridge of the Aurora and watched the stars pass by through the viewport. His ship was 7 months into a routine mission to map new worlds beyond the solar system. The year was 2247 and humanity had finally mastered faster-than-light travel. Derek felt proud to be leading one of the first deep space exploration missions. Lieutenant Commander Amy Wright sat at her station monitoring communication channels. She was responsible for listening to all signals the ship received. Most days were quiet with nothing but background radiation and the hum of distant stars. Today was different. Her console started beeping with an unusual pattern. She frowned and adjusted her headset. Derek noticed her reaction and walked over to her station. He asked what she had found. Amy explained that she was picking up a signal from the fourth planet in the system they were approaching. The signal was clearly artificial and repeated in mathematical sequences. This was not natural. Someone or something had created this transmission. Dr. Vincent Cole rushed to the bridge when he heard the news. He was the chief scientist aboard the Aurora, and this was exactly the kind of discovery he had dreamed about. He asked Amy to route the signal to his laboratory so he could analyze it properly. His hands were shaking with excitement as he left the bridge. Commander Lisa Grant stood beside Derek and suggested they proceed with caution. She was his second in command and always thought about safety first. Derek agreed, but he also knew they could not ignore this discovery. They had traveled too far to turn back now without investigating. 2 hours later, Vincent returned to the bridge with troubling news. The signal was not a greeting. It was a warning beacon. He had managed to decode parts of the message and found coordinates pointing to a location 7 light-years away. The message also contained symbols that suggested danger and urged ships to stay away. Derek called a meeting with his senior officers. They debated whether to follow the coordinates or report back to Earth immediately. Lieutenant Danny Murphy argued they should investigate since the signal mentioned coordinates specifically. Maybe someone needed help. Commander Grant disagreed and said unknown warnings should be taken seriously. Derek made his decision. They would jump to the coordinates and observe from a safe distance. If they saw anything dangerous, they would leave immediately and warn Earth. The crew prepared the ship for the jump. Amy sent a message back to Earth explaining what they had found and where they were going. The Aurora jumped through space and emerged at the coordinates 3 days later. What they found made everyone on the bridge fall silent. A massive structure floated in the empty space between stars. It was the size of Earth's moon and clearly artificial. The surface was covered in complex patterns and geometric shapes. Large sections appeared damaged with debris floating around it. Derek ordered a full sensor sweep. The results showed faint life signs deep inside the structure. He decided to send a boarding party to investigate. Danny volunteered to lead the team. Vincent and Dr. Helen Park joined him. She was a xenobiologist who specialized in studying alien life forms. The boarding party took a shuttle across to the structure and found an entrance through one of the damaged sections. They entered carefully with weapons ready. The interior corridors were vast and built for beings much larger than humans. Scorch marks covered the walls and ceiling. Something violent had happened here. They found bodies scattered throughout the corridors. The aliens were tall with 6 limbs and skin that looked like crystal. They had been dead for a long time. Vincent scanned one of the bodies and estimated they had been dead for at least 10,000 years. Whatever killed them had done so with extreme force. The team reached what appeared to be a central chamber. Equipment lined the walls and a large platform stood in the center. Helen found a control panel that was still functioning. She carefully activated it. A holographic display appeared above the platform showing images and symbols. Vincent worked to translate the symbols using the mathematical patterns from the warning beacon. Slowly, the message became clear. The hologram showed a recording of the structure's final moments. The tall aliens were working frantically at their stations. Then something appeared on the screens. Massive creatures that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. They attacked without warning. The hologram called these creatures the Devourers. Vincent watched in horror as the recording showed how easily they tore through the alien defenses. The Devourers consumed everything in their path. They destroyed ships and ripped apart the station. The aliens tried to fight back, but their weapons barely slowed the attackers down. The recording showed a map with marked regions of space. These were areas where the Devourers had been detected. Vincent's blood ran cold when he realized one thing. The marked danger zones included a large area of space that humanity had been sending colony ships toward for the past 50 years. He immediately contacted Derek on the Aurora. They needed to return to Earth and warn everyone. Humanity was expanding directly into Devourer territory. Derek ordered the boarding party to return at once. He set course for Earth at maximum speed. But before the Aurora could jump away, something appeared on their sensors. A ship was emerging from subspace nearby. The signature matched the descriptions from the alien hologram. A Devourer scout had found them. Derek ordered battle stations. Lisa brought all weapons online and raised shields. The Devourer ship materialized 200,000 kilometers away. It looked wrong. The hull seemed to shift and change shape constantly. Dark energy rippled across its surface. The sensors could barely track it. Lieutenant Greg Palmer pushed the Aurora's engines to maximum, trying to gain distance for a safe jump. But the Devourer ship moved impossibly fast. It closed the gap in seconds. Derek had no choice but to fight. The Aurora fired its railguns and plasma cannons. The shots passed through the enemy ship like it was not solid. Then the Devourer returned fire. Energy beams struck the Aurora's shields. The first hit was absorbed, but the second one made the shields flicker and weaken. Vincent worked frantically in his laboratory studying the sensor data. He discovered the Devourer ship was phasing between dimensions. That was why their weapons could not hit it properly. But there was a brief moment when it fired that it had to fully materialize in normal space. He sent the timing data to Lisa. Lisa waited and watched her tactical display carefully. When the Devourer fired again, she unleashed everything at the exact moment of materialization. The plasma bolts connected and tore chunks from the enemy hull. The Devourer ship pulled back damaged. Everyone on the bridge felt a moment of hope. Then they watched in disbelief as the enemy ship began to repair itself. The damaged sections closed up and regenerated. Even worse, the Devourer sent out a burst transmission into deep space. It was calling for help. Derek knew they could not win this fight. Earth needed the warning more than anything else. He made a hard choice. He ordered Danny to take the Aurora's shuttle called the Sentinel, with a small crew, and jump to Earth. The Aurora would stay and keep the Devourer. Busy Amy volunteered to go with the shuttle to make sure all their data reached Earth. Vincent insisted on staying. He believed he could find a way to stop the Devourer. Derek did not argue. Time was running out. The Sentinel detached and began its jump sequence. Derek maneuvered the Aurora through the debris field using the wreckage as cover. The Devourer followed, focused entirely on the larger ship. The Sentinel jumped away successfully. Derek and his crew had bought humanity a chance to prepare for what was coming. The Sentinel jumped through space carrying its precious cargo of information and warnings. Amy Wright sat in the co-pilot seat checking their course every few minutes. She could not stop thinking about Captain Shaw and the crew they had left behind. Lieutenant Danny Murphy piloted the shuttle with steady hands, but his jaw was clenched tight. Everyone aboard knew what sacrifice the Aurora was making. 3 weeks later, the Sentinel arrived at Earth. Amy immediately contacted Fleet Admiral Jack Morrison at Earth Defense Command. She transmitted all the data from the alien structure and the encounter with the Devourer scout. Morrison listened to her report in silence. When she finished, he told her to come directly to headquarters. The data from the Aurora spread quickly through Earth's military and scientific communities. Dr. Philip Turner led the analysis team studying everything they had learned about the Devourers. He presented his findings to an emergency council that included representatives from every major human government and colony. Philip's news was worse than anyone had feared. The Devourers operated on physics principles that humanity barely understood. They could phase between dimensions, which made them nearly impossible to hit with conventional weapons. They could regenerate from damage by pulling matter from somewhere unknown. They drew energy directly from subspace itself. Every advantage humanity had in warfare meant nothing against this enemy. Senator Claire Evans asked the question everyone was thinking. What about the colony ships currently traveling toward the expansion corridor? 73 ships full of families and hope were heading directly into Devourer territory. Morrison ordered immediate recall signals sent to all of them, but 6 ships were too far away. They would not receive the warning in time. Amy attended the council meeting and proposed a controversial idea. Maybe humanity could hide. The Devourers clearly hunted by detecting technology and energy signatures. What if humans could mask their presence or make themselves appear less threatening? Morrison shook his head. Humanity had never survived by hiding, and the Devourers already knew humans existed. There was no going back now. Dr. Nathan Brooks from the Science Directorate offered a different view. The ancient aliens who built the warning beacon were far more advanced than humanity. They had technology humans could only dream about, yet they fell to the devourers anyway. Pure military force would not save humanity. They needed to understand the enemy better and find weaknesses they could exploit. The Council approved a three-part plan. First, they would build the largest military fleet in human history. Second, they would establish research stations to study devourer technology from the debris of the scout ship. Third, they would create a task force to search for more warning beacons in ancient sites. Maybe other civilizations had learned something useful before they died. Vice Admiral Laura Bennett received command of the Research and Exploration Task Force. She chose her crew carefully from the best people across all of human space. Her flagship was a new vessel called the Endeavor. It carried experimental weapons based on the research notes Vincent Cole had sent before the Aurora was destroyed. On the colony world of New Haven, Administrator Paul Jenkins received bad news. One of the ships that could not be recalled had gone silent. The colony ship Horizon was supposed to arrive at its destination 3 days ago. No one had heard from it since. Jenkins sent the local defense force to investigate. Commander Kyle Sanders led the search team. They found the Horizon's wreckage scattered across space near its target planet. All 3,000 colonists were dead. Sanders studied the damage patterns carefully. The attack was different from what happened to the Aurora. These wounds looked surgical and precise. The Devourers had been studying their victims. Even more disturbing was what the Devourers left behind. A spherical device about 2 meters across floated among the wreckage. It hummed with unknown energy. Sanders carefully brought it aboard his ship and reported the finding to Earth. Philip Turner examined the device remotely through video feeds. He recognized it as some kind of probe. Earth Command ordered it brought to a secret research facility on the dark side of the moon. Dr. Sarah Mitchell took charge of studying it. What Sarah found inside the probe changed everything. It contained massive amounts of data about dozens of different alien species. The Devourers had been cataloging every civilization they encountered. They were building a library of conquered peoples. Sarah found detailed information about the biology, technology, and weaknesses of each species. But the most important discovery was a reference to something called the convergence. Sarah dug deeper into the data and learned that the Devourers gathered together once every 1,000 years. The next convergence was scheduled to happen in 18 months. The location was marked clearly on star maps. It was near the galactic core 30,000 light-years from Earth. Admiral Bennett proposed a daring plan. If the Devourers were gathering for this convergence, then most of their forces would be concentrated in one place. That meant Earth had 18 months before facing a full-scale invasion. But it also presented an opportunity. What if humanity attacked first? What if they struck at the convergence itself? The debate in the council chambers was fierce. Some argued that attacking the enemy on their home ground was suicide. Others insisted that waiting for the Devourers to come to Earth was equally fatal. The data suggested that once the Devourers targeted a species, they never stopped until that species was extinct. Morrison made the final decision. Humanity would prepare for both scenarios. Most of the fleet would defend Earth and the major colonies, but a strike force would travel to the convergence. Their mission was to gather intelligence, sabotage enemy operations if possible, and most importantly, buy time for Earth to prepare its defenses. The strike force was designated Task Force Prometheus. Bennett would command from the Endeavor along with 15 of humanity's newest and most powerful warships. Amy volunteered immediately as intelligence officer. She felt responsible for seeing this through after surviving the Aurora. Sarah Mitchell joined as science advisor, bringing all her knowledge of Devourer technology. Preparation took 8 months. Earth's shipyards worked without rest building warships at a pace never seen before. Scientists raced to develop new weapons based on everything learned from the probe. Every human from Earth to the furthest colony knew their lives were about to change forever. Task Force Prometheus launched on schedule. The journey to the galactic core would take 9 months at maximum speed. If they timed everything correctly, they would arrive just as the convergence began. Bennett ordered strict protocols during the journey. Minimal communications, reduced energy signatures, and constant vigilance. They could not afford to be detected before reaching their destination. As the Endeavor and its sister ships disappeared into deep space, Earth received another signal. This one did not come from ancient aliens or human scouts. It came directly from the Devourers. The message was broadcast in 1,000 different languages, including perfect English. The words were simple and terrifying. "We are coming. Resistance is extinction." Humanity read those words and made a choice. They would not accept extinction quietly. They would fight with everything they had. Every ship, every weapon, every person would stand against the darkness. The Devourers had destroyed countless civilizations across millions of years. But they had never faced humanity before. Earth prepared for war. Task Force Prometheus traveled through the darkness between stars, following coordinates extracted from the Devourer probe. Admiral Bennett maintained strict discipline aboard every ship. The crews spoke in whispers and moved carefully. Every unnecessary energy spike could draw unwanted attention. They were heading into the heart of enemy territory. 3 months into the journey, they found evidence of the Devourer's path of destruction. An entire star system had been stripped completely bare. The planets were reduced to exposed cores with all their resources taken. The star itself appeared dimmed, as if something had drained energy directly from its fusion reactions. Debris fields floated where cities and civilizations once thrived. Sarah Mitchell's science team cataloged everything they found. She spent long hours studying the patterns of destruction, looking for any weakness or vulnerability. Amy Wright worked alongside her, comparing the devastation to data from other Devourer attack sites. Together, they noticed something important. The Devourers did not consume randomly. They targeted specific elements and energy types while leaving others untouched. Captain Ryan Foster commanded the destroyer Vigilant. He studied the consumption patterns and developed a theory. Maybe the convergence was not just a gathering. Maybe the Devourers were building something. All the specific resources they harvested across the galaxy suggested they needed precise materials for construction. The question was, what were they building? 6 months into the mission, Task Force Prometheus reached the outer boundary of the convergence zone. What they saw defied human comprehension. Thousands upon thousands of Devourer vessels filled the space ahead. Ships ranged from scout-sized craft to massive behemoths larger than Earth's biggest cities. They all orbited a structure at the center of the zone. The structure was incomplete but growing steadily. It formed a ring with a diameter larger than Earth's entire orbit around the sun. Devourer ships delivered materials constantly. Construction drones worked without pause, welding and assembling components. Energy readings from the partial ring made the Endeavor's sensors scream warnings. Sarah analyzed the energy signatures for hours. When she finally understood what she was seeing, her hands started shaking. She called Bennett to her laboratory immediately. The Admiral arrived to find Sarah staring at her screen with tears running down her face. Sarah explained in a quiet voice that the ring was a portal. The Devourers were building a gateway to another dimension or possibly another galaxy. They were not invaders. They were migrants trying to bring their entire civilization into this reality. Bennett called an emergency meeting of all ship captains. Commander Jake Peters of the battleship Defiant argued for immediate attack. If they damaged the ring now, they might stop the Devourers forever. Foster disagreed strongly. Attacking would be suicide. They were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. The task force would be destroyed before making any real impact. Amy suggested a different approach. They should gather detailed intelligence about the ring's structure and identify critical weak points. Then they could send all that data back to Earth on a stealth probe while attempting sabotage. Even if Task Force Prometheus did not survive, Earth would know how to stop future portal construction. Bennett approved the plan. For 3 weeks, the task force conducted careful surveillance. They mapped every section of the ring and tracked Devourer patrol patterns. Sarah identified 7 critical nodes that regulated power flow to the portal. Destroying even one node might cause a cascade failure that would collapse the entire structure. But their careful observation was not careful enough. A Devourer patrol detected an energy anomaly in their search grid. Ships moved to investigate the task force's hiding position. Bennett had no choice. She ordered immediate dispersal. All 15 ships scattered in different directions, trying to confuse the pursuit. The Endeavor escaped with 3 escort ships. The destroyers Vigilant and Resolute stayed close along with the cruiser Pathfinder. But Captain Susan Walker's battleship Newton was caught by the patrol. Walker and her crew fought with desperate courage. They destroyed 2 Devourer vessels before being overwhelmed. Walker's final transmission was defiant. She told Bennett that humanity would not surrender quietly. The loss of the Newton and 3 other ships hardened the resolve of the survivors. Bennett accelerated their timeline. They had gathered enough intelligence. The stealth probe carrying all their data was ready for launch. Now came the dangerous part. They would attack the ring directly. Bennett's plan required perfect coordination. 7 nodes needed to be destroyed simultaneously. With only 11 ships remaining, each vessel would target one node, while the others provided support. The Endeavor would attack the primary node, which was the most heavily defended position. Everyone understood the odds of survival were almost zero. The crews prepared in different ways. Foster recorded messages for his family. Amy wrote letters to people she loved. Sarah made final notes about her research findings. Each person aboard the task force ships knew they were about to give their lives for humanity's survival. Task Force Prometheus initiated the attack when Devourer activity was concentrated on the far side of the ring. Human ships emerged from hiding at maximum velocity with all weapons firing. The surprise worked initially. 3 nodes exploded before the Devourer fleet could react. Then the enemy swarmed like angry insects. The Pathfinder died within minutes under concentrated fire. The Resolute managed to destroy its target node before enemy beams tore through the hull. Foster's Vigilant fought a running battle toward its objective. The destroyer's shields failed and armor melted under Devourer weapons. Foster destroyed the 4th node, then ordered his crew to evacuate. He stayed behind and piloted the dying ship into a cluster of enemy vessels. The reactor detonation took out a dozen Devourer craft. The Endeavor pushed toward the primary node with 4 escorts protecting it. Lieutenant Scott Mason served as tactical officer. He found a clever solution to the Devourer defensive screen. By firing through the ring itself, the human ships could use its mass as cover during their approach. 2 escorts fell to enemy fire, but the strategy worked. The Endeavor reached the primary node. Bennett ordered every weapon concentrated on the target. Amy coordinated the assault, directing fire at weak points Sarah had identified. The node began to crack and fracture under the bombardment. Energy discharges sparked across its surface. But victory came with a terrible price. A massive Devourer flagship, larger than anything they had encountered, moved to intercept. Its weapons were devastating. The Endeavor's shields collapsed under the first salvo. Hull breaches opened across multiple decks. Atmosphere vented into space. Bennett made her final command decision. She ordered all remaining crew to evacuate in the shuttle bays while she piloted the ship into the primary node. Sarah refused to leave. She stayed at her station to ensure the node's complete destruction. Security personnel physically dragged Amy to an escape shuttle. She fought them the entire way, screaming that she would not abandon her friends. The Endeavor, burning and broken, accelerated toward the primary node. Bennett and Sarah sat together on the bridge. They did not speak. There was nothing left to say. The ship struck the node at 1/10 light speed. The impact, combined with the detonation of antimatter reserves, created an explosion visible across the entire sector. The primary node disintegrated. Energy cascaded through the ring's power grid. One by one, the remaining nodes failed. The ring structure began to collapse under its own gravitational stress. The Devourers had partially activated the portal during the attack. Now it became unstable. Reality itself started tearing around the dying ring. Surviving shuttles and 3 damaged human ships fled at maximum speed. They watched the ring's death. A gravitational anomaly consumed everything nearby. Devourer vessels and portal fragments disappeared into the collapsing singularity. Then it evaporated in a burst of radiation. 2 months later, 6 shuttles and 1 badly damaged destroyer arrived at Earth. Of 400 personnel who left with Task Force Prometheus, only 67 survived. Amy was among them, carrying Bennett's final log and the complete intelligence package. Earth celebrated, but the victory tasted bitter. The Convergence was destroyed and the invasion delayed, but everyone knew the Devourers would eventually rebuild. The war was just beginning. The destruction of the Convergence ring gave humanity time to prepare. Fleet Admiral Morrison used every second wisely. Earth's entire industrial capacity shifted to war production. New shipyards appeared in orbit around every major planet and moon. Factories that once made civilian goods now produced weapons and armor. Scientists worked around the clock, developing new technologies based on intelligence that Task Force Prometheus had died to obtain. Amy Wright received a promotion to commander for her role in the mission. She worked closely with Dr. Philip Turner, analyzing every piece of data from the Convergence. They made a remarkable discovery buried in the records. The ring was not the Devourer's first attempt at building a portal. Scattered throughout the galaxy were ruins of similar structures. All of them were failures. All of them had been abandoned. This revelation changed everything. The Devourers were not invincible. They could fail, and had failed repeatedly over thousands of years. Philip developed a theory about their greatest weakness. The Devourers depended on very specific resources and conditions to build their portals. Disrupt those conditions and you disrupt their plans. Stop them from gathering resources, and you stop their migration. Amy proposed forming rapid response groups. Small, fast task forces would locate Devourer construction efforts and sabotage them before completion. Instead of waiting for the enemy to come to humanity, humans would hunt the Devourers across the galaxy. The strategy was aggressive and dangerous, but it gave humanity the initiative. Morrison approved the plan immediately. The Pathfinder Initiative was born. Dozens of small flotillas equipped with advanced stealth technology and powerful weapons deployed across known space. Each group had orders to monitor regions where Devourer activity had been detected. Amy commanded Pathfinder Group 7 from a light carrier called the Odyssey. For 18 months, the initiative succeeded beyond all expectations. Human forces destroyed 3 more nascent ring structures before they could be completed. They captured Devourer technology for study, and even rescued survivors from recently attacked alien civilizations. Word spread through the galaxy that humanity was fighting back. For the first time in memory, someone was hunting the Devourers instead of running from them. But the Devourers learned and adapted. New ship designs appeared that were faster and more aggressive than before. Enemy forces began coordinating their operations more effectively. They set elaborate traps for human patrol groups. Pathfinder Group 3 was ambushed and annihilated with all hands lost. Group 9 barely escaped with half their ships destroyed. Casualty rates started climbing steadily. Then Earth received an unexpected message. The transmission came from another spacefaring species calling themselves the Kailari. They originated from the Andromeda Galaxy and had been fighting the Devourers for generations. The Devourers had pushed them back to just a handful of systems. The Kalari had intercepted human communications and wanted to propose an alliance. Morrison was deeply skeptical. Humanity had no reason to trust aliens after everything they had learned. But Amy argued that the Kalari possessed knowledge and experience humanity desperately needed. If they had survived this long against the Devourers, they must have developed effective tactics and possibly effective weapons. The Kalari ambassador arrived at Earth aboard a vessel that made human ships look primitive. The alien introduced itself as Elder Saris, speaking through advanced translation technology. Saris appeared humanoid, but with silver skin and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle pattern. The Elder moved with grace that suggested great age and wisdom. Saris shared information that explained much about the Devourers. They were not a natural species that evolved on some distant world. An ancient civilization had created them as tools for exploration and resource gathering. The Devourers became self-aware and turned against their creators. They had been consuming civilizations and gathering resources ever since, trying to build enough portals to spread across multiple realities and dimensions. The revelation horrified the Human Council, but Saris continued with more important information. The Kalari had discovered a weapon capable of permanently destroying Devourer vessels. They called it a quantum disruptor. It prevented the enemy's regeneration and stopped their dimensional phasing. Devourer ships hit by quantum disruptors died permanently, instead of healing and adapting. However, there was a serious problem. The weapon required rare elements found only in the cores of collapsing stars. The Kalari lacked the industrial capacity to produce quantum disruptors in large quantities, but human manufacturing capabilities, combined with Kalari technology, could arm a fleet powerful enough to challenge the Devourers directly. The alliance formed quickly after that meeting. Human engineers worked alongside Kalari scientists adapting the quantum disruptor for human weapon systems. The first prototype test exceeded all expectations. A single shot completely destroyed a Devourer cruiser during a controlled engagement. The enemy ship simply ceased to exist with no regeneration and no dimensional escape. Production facilities started manufacturing the new weapons immediately. But time was running out faster than anyone realized. Intelligence reports from multiple sources painted a dire picture. The Devourers were gathering forces for a massive assault toward human and Kalari space. Estimates suggested a fleet numbering over 10,000 vessels. Leading this armada was something Kalari archives called a Harbinger. It was a Devourer, command ship that had never been defeated in all of recorded history. Earth and Kalari forces prepared for the battle that would determine their survival. The combined fleet designated Alliance Fleet 1 assembled in the frontier sector. 300 human warships equipped with quantum disruptors joined 100 Kalari vessels with experimental shielding technology. Supporting craft included carriers, logistics ships, and mobile repair stations. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Fleet Admiral Morrison assumed overall command with Elder Saris as strategic advisor. Amy coordinated intelligence for the entire fleet. They positioned their forces along the predicted Devourer approach vector and settled in to wait. Tension aboard every ship was unbearable. Crews checked weapons repeatedly. Pilots ran simulation after simulation. Everyone knew what was coming. The Devourers arrived 3 weeks later. Their fleet was even larger than intelligence had estimated. 12,000 vessels ranging from scouts to the massive Harbinger filled the sensors. The Harbinger itself was the size of a small moon. Its hull seemed to absorb light, making it appear as a hole in space. Energy readings from the command ship made human instruments malfunction. The battle began with a Devourer Alpha strike that tested Alliance defenses. Thousands of enemy ships fired simultaneously. Alliance shields held, but several vessels took damage. Morrison ordered the fleet to return fire. Quantum disruptors proved devastatingly effective. Human and Kalari ships destroyed dozens of Devourer vessels in the opening minutes. Enemy craft died permanently instead of regenerating. For the first time, the Devourers faced weapons that could truly hurt them, but the sheer numbers were overwhelming. For every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more moved forward to take its place. The battle turned into a brutal slugging match. Human ships used superior tactics and maneuverability. Kalari vessels absorbed incredible damage with their advanced shields. The Devourers relied on raw numbers and firepower. Space filled with debris and energy discharges. Amy analyzed battle data, searching for patterns and weaknesses. She noticed something crucial. The Harbinger remained in the rear of the enemy formation, apparently directing the entire battle. It transmitted, constantly coordinating every Devourer vessel with perfect precision. The Harbinger was the command node for the entire fleet. Destroy it and the enemy would lose cohesion and coordination. She proposed a desperate plan to Morrison. A small team would penetrate the enemy fleet using a stealth ship. They would board the Harbinger and sabotage it from within, while the main fleet kept the Devourers occupied. Morrison listened carefully. The plan was insane and suicidal. It was also their best chance at victory. He approved the mission but insisted it be volunteer only. Amy immediately stepped forward. Several veterans from the original task force Prometheus joined her. They would use a modified Kalari stealth vessel fast enough to slip through the battle lines. Their pilot would be Lieutenant Chris Bennett, nephew of the late Admiral Bennett, who had sacrificed herself at the Convergence. The strike team launched, during an intense engagement that drew most Devourer forces toward the fleet's left flank. The stealth ship slipped through the chaos of battle like a shadow. Lieutenant Chris Bennett piloted with steady hands, weaving between energy beams and debris. Explosions lit up space around them, but Chris never wavered. He had learned to fly from his Aunt Admiral Laura Bennett. Her sacrifice at the Convergence inspired him every day. He would not fail now. Amy sat in the co-pilot seat, monitoring sensors. The Harbinger grew larger on their screens. It was massive beyond comprehension. The command ship's hull was covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift and move. Energy readings spiked randomly across its surface. She wondered what they would find inside. The boarding team consisted of 12 people. Each one was a veteran who had survived at least one major engagement with the Devourers. Sergeant Tim Harper handled demolitions. Lieutenant Andrew Cole was a systems expert. His father, Dr. Vincent Cole, had died aboard the original Aurora. Andrew felt he was following in his father's footsteps by volunteering for this mission. Chris brought the stealth ship alongside a damaged section of the Harbinger's hull. The massive vessel had been struck by quantum disruptor fire during the battle. The wound provided an entry point. Harper used cutting tools to open a passage large enough for the team to enter. The interior of the Harbinger was alien and hostile. Gravity shifted unexpectedly, making it hard to walk. The atmosphere was toxic, forcing everyone to keep their helmets sealed. Strange lights pulsed through the walls. The team moved carefully, weapons ready. They encountered their first defenses within minutes. Mechanical drones emerged from the walls, attacking with energy weapons and sharp appendages. The team fought through them with difficulty. These defenders were more sophisticated than any devourer technology humans had seen before. They moved with purpose and intelligence. Andrew studied a destroyed drone and made a disturbing discovery. The machines were partially organic. Flesh and metal merged together in ways that should not be possible. The devourers had been incorporating biological matter from their victims into their technology. Every conquered species contributed to their growing capabilities. The team pressed deeper into the ship, following Amy's readings toward the control center. They fought through wave after wave of drones. Harper rigged explosives as they went, creating a trail of charges that could be detonated remotely. If they failed to stop the Harbinger, at least they could damage it severely. After what felt like hours, they reached a vast chamber that could only be the Harbinger's brain. Massive conduits pulsed with energy, connecting to what looked like a mechanical neural network. Data streamed through the system faster than human eyes could track. This was where the Harbinger coordinated the entire Devourer fleet. Harper immediately began placing charges throughout the chamber. He worked quickly but carefully. The explosives needed to be positioned precisely to cause maximum damage. Amy and the others defended the entrances as more drones arrived. The fighting was brutal and desperate. Andrew connected his portable computer to one of the conduits. He tried to understand the Harbinger's systems and possibly disrupt them before the explosives were ready. What he found shocked him. The Harbinger was not just a command ship. It was alive in a way, self-aware. It had been created from the merged consciousness of 1,000 conquered species. All those minds trapped together, controlling the Devourer fleet. He tried to communicate with it. He sent basic mathematical sequences and simple messages. For a moment, something responded. Andrew glimpsed ancient pain and endless hunger. The Harbinger showed him what the Devourers truly were. They were tools that had outlived their purpose. They consumed because that was their function. They could not stop even if they wanted to. Then the Harbinger became aware of the intruders. The entire ship turned its attention inward. The walls began to shift and close, trying to trap the team. Gravity intensified, crushing them toward the floor. The temperature dropped rapidly. Harper finished arming the last charge and shouted that they needed to leave immediately. The team ran for the exit passage. Drones swarmed from every direction. Lieutenant Cole stayed behind at a critical junction, holding it open for the others to pass. He told Amy to tell his family that he was proud to follow his father's example. The passage began closing. Andrew triggered his grenades, taking dozens of drones with him and buying precious seconds for his team. Chris had the stealth ship ready when the survivors emerged. Only 8 people made it out. Amy was the last one through the hull breach. She looked back once, thinking of Andrew and all the others they had lost. Then Harper detonated the charges. The explosions cascaded through the Harbinger's systems. The control center disintegrated. Energy conduits ruptured. The massive ship began losing power. Its coordination signals to the Devourer fleet fell silent abruptly. Across the battlefield, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Devourer ships suddenly became disorganized. They stopped moving in perfect coordination and started acting independently. Some vessels collided with others. Attack patterns fell apart. The unified fleet became a chaotic mob. Fleet Admiral Morrison saw the change instantly. He ordered Alliance Fleet 1 to attack with everything they had. Human and Kalari ships equipped with quantum disruptors tore through the now confused Devourer ranks. Without the Harbinger's guidance, individual enemy vessels reverted to simple tactics. They became predictable and vulnerable. The battle raged for 6 more hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Devourers had lost their advantage. Human tactics and Kalari technology combined with quantum disruptor weapons proved devastating. Enemy ships died by the hundreds. Those that survived began fleeing into deep space. For perhaps the first time in their long existence, the Devourers retreated from a fight. When the battle finally ended, nearly half the Devourer fleet had been destroyed. The remainder scattered across the galaxy. Alliance forces had suffered heavy casualties, but they had won a decisive victory. More importantly, they had proven something crucial. The Devourers could be beaten. News of the victory spread across human and Kalari space. Celebrations erupted on every world, but the military leadership understood this was only one battle in a much longer war. The Devourers would rebuild. They would adapt. They would return with new tactics and strategies. Humanity needed to remain vigilant and continue preparing. Amy received another promotion to captain and was given command of a new vessel. The ship was named Aurora II in honor of Captain Derek Shaw and the crew that had started this journey. She continued leading Pathfinder missions hunting for Devourer, construction sites and building alliances with other species who had suffered under Devourer, attacks Earth scientists working with Kalari. Colleagues made breakthrough after breakthrough. They learned to track Devourer movements across vast distances. They developed methods to predict where the enemy would build their next portal. They even found ways to communicate with other synthetic species the Devourers had created long ago. Some of those ancient tools were willing to share information about their creators. 5 years after first contact with the Devourers, humanity had transformed completely. They were no longer a minor spacefaring species exploring cautiously. They had become a major galactic power. The threat of extinction had forged humanity into something stronger and more determined than ever before. Captain Amy Wright stood on the bridge of the Aurora II looking out at the stars. She thought about all the people who had sacrificed everything so humanity could survive. Captain Shaw and the original Aurora crew, Admiral Bennett and Task Force Prometheus, Andrew Cole and countless others. Their names would be remembered forever. The war against the Devourers continued. New threats emerged as humanity expanded their influence. But humans had learned the most important lesson. They were not helpless victims waiting to be consumed. They were survivors who could adapt to any challenge. They were fighters who never surrendered even when facing impossible odds. They were builders who could forge alliances and create hope where none existed before. Humanity had announced their presence to the galaxy. They had declared that they would not accept extinction quietly. When humans decided to fight, the universe itself would take notice. Other species watched in amazement as these newcomers challenged an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for eons. The Devourers had consumed thousands of civilizations over millions of years. They had faced countless different forms of resistance, but they had never encountered anything quite like humanity. Humans possessed something unique. They had determination that bordered on stubbornness. They had creativity that led to unexpected solutions. They had courage that inspired others to stand and fight. Amy received reports daily of new species joining the alliance against the Devourers. The Kalari were no longer alone in their struggle. Dozens of civilizations were banding together, united by a common enemy and inspired by human example. For the first time in galactic history, the Devourers faced organized resistance across multiple sectors simultaneously. The future remained uncertain. The Devourers were ancient and patient. They would not be defeated quickly or easily. But humanity had given the galaxy something it had lacked for too long. Hope. The belief that victory was possible. The knowledge that even the darkest threat could be challenged.